if you want to grow as a person, if you want to create change in your life, if you want to just be different, like not we're so many of us get caught in cycles where we are kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. And I personally also suffer from the same thing. It's, in yoga, they talk about your samskaras, this idea of like we get trapped in these cycles of these things that we need to learn from. And so in my mind, I see self-reflection as the antidote for these repeating patterns. Welcome to A Way of Thinking podcast. This podcast is dedicated to lighting the way towards greater inner peace and purpose. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Way of Thinking. I'm your host, Jessica Huang. And this episode is kind of a two-part series where this episode is going to focus on reflecting on the past year, and the next episode is going to focus on the year ahead and envisioning that next step. And so this episode, we're really focused in on reflecting on 2023, or whatever year it may be when you're listening to this. So before we get started, let me make a few quick announcements. So if you would like to donate to the podcast and support all the efforts that go behind the scenes to make this show a reality, you can do so at my website at jessicahuangcoaching.com/donate. And I want to take a second and just thank you all so very much for listening to A Way of Thinking. And it's hard to believe I've been doing this for over a year and a half now. And, I never knew what was going to come of creating this podcast, but it has been the biggest blessing and the biggest joy. And it's such an honor seeing more and more people listening to the podcast, and I hope gaining a little bit of wisdom from it. So thank you so much for listening. It really means the world to me. And so second thing is that if you are someone that is reflecting on your year and saying, I really want to make a change, I really want to shift my career into something more creative, passion, purpose-driven, and you're looking for support in doing so, I urge you to go to my website, jessicahuangcoaching.com, and sign up for a free discovery session with me and get started in scoping out what it would look like to get the support to really shift your life from whatever it is right now into that new journey that you have been envisioning for yourself. Okay, and last but not least is if you are looking for to practice yoga, I have 3 offerings that I have on Sundays. So there is psychic development, a pranayama class, yoga nidra, which is a relaxation where you're allowing yourself to heal and rest and rejuvenate. And then there's charging practice, which is a dharma yoga asana practice meant to give you that boost of energy to really charge you up for the week ahead. So if any of that interests you, you can DM me or reach out to me on my website. And my Instagram handle is also Jessica Huang Coaching. So let's get started. I am so incredibly excited for this episode. So today is all about reflections. And I think that, well, to be honest, this topic kind of makes me like super excited. I'm a bit of a nerd around these things where I love self-reflecting so much so that I'll be honest with you, I do it in like all these different ways in all these different formats. And it's something that I do every single month, actually. So at the end of every month, I kind of do a little reflection on how that month went, how I've been feeling about everything, and just like take in some of the things that we're about to talk about. So I don't, I'm not saying that you need to do it every month, but that's my personal process. And I will tell you that it's been incredibly important to me. And I will say though, year end is the most exciting to me. It's so funny. When December hit, I got this weird kind of burst of energy or like excitement because I was like, "Ooh, it's time to self-reflect." And I know I might be in the minority on that feeling. I don't know. A lot of people don't, they want to just like put it behind them and move on. They're like, "All right, get me out of this year. Like, let's move on to the next year." And I get that. But I actually think that if you want to grow as a person, if you want to create change in your life, if you want to just be different, like not we're so many of us get caught in cycles where we are kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. And I personally also suffer from the same thing. It's, in yoga, they talk about your samskaras, this idea of like we get trapped in these cycles of these things that we need to learn from. And so in my mind, I see self-reflection as the antidote for these repeating patterns. It is us giving ourselves space to really take stock of how things have been, how things are going, and be able to take in any lessons that we need from the past year or whatever time period that you're looking at. And I think that there is such an importance around giving ourselves that space, of giving ourselves the ability to compassionately and slowly kind of work through what it is that occurred in the last year. So that to me, I think is incredibly important in the journey of life, in the journey of becoming a better version of ourselves, is this ability to look back and say, how do I feel about things? How have things been going? What do I want more of? What do I want less of? What were the amazing things that happened? What were the things that I really want to learn from and take the learnings from? And so I think that for me personally, I love it just because it's the ability to say like we're going to take it all in. We're going to take it all in and we're going to reflect on it. We're going to learn things about ourselves, learn things about what we experienced and synthesize all that and then be able to move into that next phase. So how are we going to do this today? I had this idea where I would lead you through a bit of a meditation. And if that's not of interest to you, you are welcome to jump ahead past the meditation. I'll try and put a little marker so that you can jump ahead and skip over it. But I love meditations because the beauty of meditation is that it gives you space. There's something about the quietness that allows us to open up and reflect and allow things to come in that otherwise there's a lot of kind of noise. We're constantly having all these thoughts racing around in our heads, and we're constantly dealing with this, that, and the other thing, and I gotta get this done and I gotta do that. And so I liked the idea of taking a moment and meditating. And a guided meditation is nice because it's like you can then just listen to what I'm saying and just allow the suggestions to lead your mind. So we're going to do that. And then I'll get into some ideas and some questions at the end of the meditation. All right. So if you can, and keep in mind, you can do this walking or you can do this sitting down. If you are able to, I would suggest kind of finding a nice quiet space to sit in. If that's not available to you right now, that is okay. You can still do this even while you're doing other things. Or I used to listen to podcasts a lot while I was like cleaning my apartment and doing dishes and stuff. And, you're welcome to do that as I'm guiding you through this as well. And again, if you want, you can come back to this at another time if that makes more sense for you, and find that space for yourself. So I open it up for you on how you use this meditation, but this is what I'm offering to you. Okay, so let's get started. So if you are able to, I suggest that you find a nice, comfortable seated position, find somewhere a little bit quieter, and make that space for you, somewhere where you feel comfortable to close, maybe soften your eyes or close your eyes. Okay, so find that comfortable seat. If you want to, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. And start to just center yourself in on your breath. So just paying attention to your inhales and your exhales. Just all your attention there on your inhales and your exhales. And now I want you to gently let go of wherever you were before this and wherever you are going after this. And just focus yourself on your inhales and your exhales. And now I want you to start to imagine that you are getting up from wherever you are seated and you are walking out the door of wherever you are right now. And I want you to imagine that as you walk out of this door, you're suddenly transported to the version of you on January 1st of this year. And I want you to imagine that you are now walking along a path. Could be a hallway, could be a street, maybe a path in the forest, whatever comes to mind. And I want you to imagine that as you're walking down this path, it is as if you're watching your year go by. And so it's like there's screens alongside the path that are replaying parts of your year, showing you the most important things. And so I want you to imagine, and you can go month by month, and if you need to, you can pause this recording. And I want you to reflect and go through each month, or you can think of it by quarter, and just take note of what is it that's important for you to remember from this year. What were the biggest moments of this year? What were the important things? Were there major accomplishments, celebrations? Were there hardships and difficulties? And I want you to pay attention and note that you're not making any judgments on these moments, but instead you are just the witness. You're just watching them play in front of you on these screens. So you're just watching the screen replay your year and imagining that you are simply seeing what occurred and what is noteworthy. So take a moment here and just reflect if there's anything else that you want to remember and make note of. and take in those moments. And then I want you to imagine that you are reaching another door at the end of this path. And when you walk through that door, it is leading you back into wherever you are right now. And so you can slowly either sit down or come back to the space that you are in. And you can slowly start to wiggle your fingers and your toes, move your head, and come back to right here, right now. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. So I'm going to ask you some questions and we're going to reflect a little bit on whatever it is that came up for you as you were doing this meditation. So the first thing that I want to talk about is something that I brought up in the meditation, right? So I mentioned the idea of not having judgment. And instead of judgment, I love turning that into the word curiosity. And so how can we release that judgment and first just let things be as is, right? Like allow them to just be like that screen. It is as if we're the witness. We are witnessing what has occurred without labeling it as good or bad, without placing that judgment saying like, oh, this is how I feel about that occurring. And instead allowing ourselves the space to say like, this is what happened objectively and just letting it be. And so there's a certain amount of how can we just accept what has occurred? There's this idea where like we would love to love everything that happened in our lives. We would love to really embrace it. But oftentimes there are some things that I think that it will take time, years, or maybe it's just not meant to be something that we embrace. And sometimes there's things that we just need to simply accept. So can we come to a place of not judging what has occurred, but just accepting what has occurred? And I think there's a lot of power behind just allowing ourselves to be the witness and just witnessing like what has occurred without the emotion tied behind it. Okay. And then from there comes the idea of curiosity. And curiosity is something that I absolutely love because curiosity is, I think, what allows us to grow. It allows us to be open and willing to not have the answer and or explore whatever it is that we're looking at. And that's the idea that I think is so important in this kind of reflection is how can we be curious about it instead of being judgmental about it? And one thing I really want to stress about this is for many of us, maybe coming into this conversation, you would have said, my year was bad. And that's where something that I mentioned earlier is how can we move beyond this good or bad? Because there's some years where, yes, like tough things and challenges have occurred. But is there the ability to not label it with that good or bad? Because once we label it with good or bad, then there becomes a story behind that and a dialogue behind that closes us off from the ability to be curious, to be open, and to reflect on it. And I think that there's something very important around this reflection and the ability to just be the witness is the fact that we are natural storytellers. Our brains are story-making machines. And I want to challenge you to release a little bit of the story that you are tying down to whatever has occurred in your life for this year and instead have a like a blank slate around it to go, this is what occurred. I'm not putting it as good or bad. I'm not attaching this storyline, or I'm detaching the storyline that I've been telling myself, and allowing myself to apply some curiosity around it instead. Okay, so that's the framework that we want to be working in as we go through these questions. And the other thing that I cannot emphasize enough is the importance of compassion. And compassion is so very important as we go through this, because oftentimes when we are creating a story of good or bad in terms of our circumstances, there is also a level of judgment that we are placing upon ourselves. And that's really hard on us, right? Like that's something that doubles down on the pain, right? So we may suffer through something. It's almost like we're in like a cycle of suffering, right? So we suffer through something that might be painful, that might be difficult that we went through. And then we proceed to create a story around that and say, this thing was bad and here's why. And then on top of it, we say, this is how I'm bad because of this thing that happened. And I want you to just notice that if that is happening, and that's okay, right? We're human beings. And as I said, our minds are creative machines. Like they naturally want us to create a storyline, to live in that storyline, and to be the thing that we are saying to ourselves. And that is why this reflection is so important, is because this is giving us the space to say, like, is this story serving me? Is this judgment that I've placed upon myself serving me? I mean, let's be honest. The answer is probably no, especially in the judgment zone. But it is allowing yourself to really notice, like, what is it that I'm telling myself about how things have been, how things are going. And I think a lot of times that negative cycle, it's like a spiral, right? Like we're spiraling downwards. It's this thing happened that was bad. The story that we tell is bad. We are bad, and yada yada, and it keeps going down. And it's how can we give ourselves a little more levity? How can we, get to a place of neutrality around it, and then start to build ourselves back up from there. Okay, so the next thing that I want us to take from this exercise is to really reflect on those big lessons. And so when you look back on your year and after doing the meditation, what are the kind of the biggest pieces of wisdom? What are the biggest learnings that you are taking away from this year? And oftentimes this does start with, what were the hardest things that I went through, right? So looking there, really taking note of like, where were the things that challenged me this year? What were the things that really were difficult? And then applying that curiosity and going into, well, what did I learn from that? Or what am I learning from that? And so there's this ability to say that there is no such thing as a real failure if we learn from it. And I love that ability to kind of turn around the idea of failure, because I firmly don't believe that anything is a failure. If I have learned something from that experience, then it's not a failure, because I needed to go through that in order to gain that lesson and get to the other side. And I want to make a little note around this. There was something that was sitting with me, I don't know, this earlier today. And it's this idea of like, if you could erase all of the hard things that you've been through, would you? And it's such an interesting reflective question, because it's saying, do you want to live like a peaceful, like beautiful, happy life all 100% of the time, and Yes, that ideal sounds dreamy and amazing. And yes, we do love the times when everything feels like it's going right and when it feels like nothing, that we're unstoppable and everything's perfect and sunny. But that's not life, right? Like life does throw us challenges, and I believe that those challenges are there and placed in front of us in order for us to learn from them. And the bigger thing that I think of when I reflect on this question is the fact that, to me, if I didn't go through those hard times, I would not be the person I am now. And I think that that is, it's very interesting, right? It's kind of like the sliding doors effect. Like if you could change this thing and make a different decision, or if you could erase something from your timeline, like would you? And to me, it's like I would never want to do that, because then I would be a different person. I would be living a different life. I would be a completely different version of myself. And I don't want that. Like I want to take in those learnings. Like I want to learn and grow and become a better version of myself. And I would not have the opportunity to do that if I did not go through the hard times. And I think that there is a certain amount of bravery to say life has been challenging, life has been hard. But instead of letting that close me and make me contract, I'm going to be remain open and remain open to whatever life brings me and whatever life wants to, whatever is meant for me, right? Like we are meant for these lessons. We are meant to learn these things. And so allowing yourself to be open even in the hard times, I think is a massive act of courage. And to anyone that is struggling right now through those hard times and going, why? I believe that you will get to the other side of that, of whatever it is that you're struggling through right now. And you will come out of the other side a bigger, better, stronger person. And you will look back and and just be amazed in yourself and in the ability to grow and learn and get through those hard times to make it to the other side. And I was talking to a client yesterday, and I was reflecting on this exact idea. It's hard when you're in the suffering. It's very hard because you're too busy suffering. You're too busy going, oh my God, get me out of here. Like, I hate this. I don't want to be here. I just want to get to the other side of this. And yet I want to remind you that there is another side to it. And when I look back, when I look back on the times that have been really hard, like let's say when I was burning out in my job, and it felt soul crushing. It felt like it would never end. But there was a little part of me that knew it couldn't last forever. And there was a big part of me that actually forced that to happen, right? Like I firmly made the decision to leave that, change my circumstance. And I think that when I look back on those moments, I go, wow, like there is purpose to those struggles. They made me a better person. They taught me so much. And those lessons are incredibly important. So I want you to keep that in mind as you're going through this exercise. But yeah, take some time and ask yourself, like, what are really the big lessons that I want to take in and carry with me from this year? All right. So now that we've gone through some of that hard stuff, I want you to come to the other side of that. And I want you to reflect on your biggest accomplishments. What were the wins of this year? What are the things that you're going, wow, like that was amazing, like those milestones, those big moments? Because so often these things happen and then we just move right on, right? Like especially with goals, we will achieve a goal, we will go, oh, I achieved the goal, yay, for like about 5 seconds, And then we'll move right on and create the next goal and completely forgot that we had completed the last goal. And so I want you to take this time and reflect on what were your achievements? What were the big things that happened this year that you want to give yourself a big freaking pat on the back for and say, like, wow, I did it. And I think both sides of this equation are incredibly important, because I think it's so important for us to learn from the hard things and to make sure we're celebrating the good things, right? And so it is really allowing ourselves the space to reflect on the fact that there's no year that is like that has absolutely no good in it. Like, I feel that if maybe you're thinking that right now, you're like, there is no good to this year. And I would challenge you to look for it, because our minds are naturally negative. We are naturally looking for the negatives in our lives, and our minds are going in that direction. And so it takes effort for us to look for the good things, to look for the accomplishments, the things that we achieved, and really give them the space that they deserve. So I encourage you to take this moment and really think about, and really maybe journal them out, or just reflect on them. What were the big accomplishments and achievements of this year? Or even like, what were the big moments? Like, what were the fun things that happened? What were the moments of levity? What were the things that brought a smile to your face? And along those lines, nothing is too small. Nothing is too small. It could just be, I went on wonderful walks with my dog. You built a great new relationship with a friend, and maybe you bought something special for yourself and you treated yourself, which maybe you don't often do. So taking in those even the little thing, the big things and the little things, taking them in and taking stock of how there were wins in this year, regardless of how big or small they are. And so, as I said at the beginning of this episode, we're going to focus on the kind of future casting in the next episode. So definitely stay tuned for that part 2 to this kind of year-end journey. And that will be the first episode in January, but we will get there. So I don't want to like leave you hanging, but I want to focus the energy today on reflecting on this year. But what are the accomplishments and the achievements of this year, and what are the lessons? And so those two sides of the things, I think, are some of the big things to look at. And then just a general kind of consensus of like how you're feeling. And so this is where that kind of storytelling goes in. And so I want you to think about, what is the story that you are currently telling yourself about this year? And just reflect on if that story is serving you. Because sometimes that narrative is going to dictate how we are moving forward, right? Are we dragging this negative narrative about this year into next year? I just love the mental image of like dragging one year into the next year. And it's like, we don't want to do that, right? So part of this effort is for us to clear space so that we're kind of giving ourselves the opportunity for whatever is meant to come to us into next year. And on the other side, it's like we're releasing ourselves from this year. We're saying like, this year occurred, we're taking in the lessons, we're taking in like the great things that happened, and we're kind of synthesizing that and saying like, okay, that was this year. And now I clear that space and I go into next year with the levity and the space to breathe, and to breathe life into what we want for next year. And so taking this time right now and saying, what is the story, the overarching story? Like, if you could create a headline for this year, what would it be? And then reflecting on, is that the headline that you want to stick with? And maybe you need to take some time and iterate on that and go, nope, that dialogue is not serving me. Like, let me find something a little more empowering. Even if it was hard, even if it was a struggle, what is an empowering message that you can say about what occurred in this year, and kind of closing the chapter, of closing the book of this year and saying, I'm ready to move forward into next year. And so I want to end this with talking a little bit about gratitude. And gratitude is one of my absolute favorite things. It is like a core value of mine, and it's something that I was thinking about how I try and incorporate it into pretty much every day, because that's how powerful I think gratitude is. And so to me, gratitude is the ability to really say, like, I appreciate the quote unquote good and the quote unquote bad, right? Like, I have giving gratitude to everything, to all that is. And I think that maybe that's a little bit radical for people, but I think that it's really powerful to say, can I apply gratitude to what is? So can I apply gratitude to this year and say, I'm grateful for what occurred. And maybe you're not grateful for what occurred yet, in which case I would say apply gratitude to yourself. So can you be grateful to yourself for getting through the trials and tribulations of this year, for making it to the other side? Can you be grateful for making it to just today? It doesn't matter if you've made it to the other side yet or not, right? It is about having made it through, and be standing here at the end of this year and saying, wow, like, I've made it through, right? And I am grateful to myself for doing so. And I think that this is such an important part of this process. I honestly, gratitude came to me through some of the hardest times I ever had. And it was reflecting on those hard moments, through breakups, through job loss, like all these different things, and being able to be grateful to myself, to the people around me, to the things that I do have. And I think that is the power of gratitude. Gratitude allows us to look for that good, right? To look for the things that matter, that are important, to be able to uh look for that levity to whatever we've been through. And I would highly suggest in cultivating some gratitude and seeing what comes up as I say that word. So for some people, like, gratitude, that word can be a little triggering. So maybe we need to stick with acceptance. So how can we accept what has occurred? How can we be okay, just okay with what's occurred? And you don't have to necessarily use the word gratitude, but if you can just say, what could be, what is the potential positive? Not saying that it's real yet, but what could be the good from this? And just being in the curiosity and the space of, and the openness of that potential. And so I hope that this is helpful, because I think it is, there is so much that we can learn through all the experiences that we go through. And those learnings are so important, and they will help us so much in that next stage of wherever we're trying to go. And I love the ability to say that that we are taking it in, we are learning from it, we're processing it, we're reflecting, and then we're able to give ourselves the space to move into that, whatever it is that awaits us on the other side. So I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you've taken in some of these lessons, and maybe started to craft your own reflection for your year. And I want you to just really, really hone in on being compassionate with yourself, of giving yourself that kind of that appreciation. There's a great word. Giving yourself the appreciation to be here, to be listening to this, to be going through the effort of reflecting on your year, of really giving yourself that space to look at it. And I want to wish you the most wonderful end of this year, and remember that there's something so beautiful of being able to close one chapter and open another. So I hope that this is helpful for you to do just that, and really, and then from there get excited for what is coming next. And as I mentioned one more time, the next episode we will do the other side of this, the ability to think about how do we vision for ourselves what we want next. But right now, I hope that it's been helpful for you to take in what was your year like, and really take in those beautiful learnings, lessons, and achievements that you've made, and be proud of yourself for all that has occurred. And of course, if you would like any support in going through these efforts of really being able to create that new story, of being able to reflect and gain those lessons, and then move into that next phase for yourself, then I invite you to please reach out to me on my website, jessicahuangcoaching.com, and it would be an honor and pleasure to connect with you. So I wish you all the best in ending and closing this chapter, and happy holidays and a very happy new year.